Can you really, is the volume okay? Okay. You all know already that my name is Rochelle Williams, and I'm a board member of Otero Arts. I have the distinct pleasure of organizing our quarterly poetry and prose reading series. Tonight, I want to introduce Carrizozo poet and potter Scott Goeway, whose reading is entitled Words and Silences. Scott studied pottery at the Rochester Institute of Technology's School for American Craftsmen and poetry at the University of Iowa's Writers' Workshop. For reasons that have never been and may never be explained, poetry has the power to pierce us, to reach right through our busyness, our defenses, our inattentiveness, and move us in ways that are hard to understand. As a poet and a reader of poetry, I can attest that poems are mysterious. A certain combination of words, pauses, rhythms, breath stops, and images can quite suddenly arrest time, or take us into the future or the past, cut us right to the core, summon long dormant memories, open our hearts, and sometimes make them bleed. Poems are powerful. Silence is an inherent part of that power. As a rule, we're uncomfortable with silence in social settings, especially with people we don't know well. We want to fill the pauses, the quiet places, with words and noise. Let's resist that impulse. Let's allow both the words and the silences to move us. I've never read or heard Scott's poems, but I'm eager to listen with my whole attention, to allow them in, to hold and contemplate them in silence as he asks, and I hope you are too. Scott?
Good evening. Oh, exactly. Awful thing. But, so I've got to just kind of stand here for a little minute or two to connect with myself. And then through that, to try to connect with you folks. And it'll be a journey as we move through this time. Is that too loud? I can't hear very well myself. It's okay. I had to try to mix poems from this book, which was 2003, and not a very big one, with the more recent ones and what was going to be a separate volume. But then I'd have to be going through these, going to this, going back and forth, and without a doubt, I would probably run into trouble, spilling things and whatever. So I had to print everything out to try to keep some order. And the first thing I have to do is for me to listen also. Listen, listen. Can you hear the sound surrounding you, inside of you, setting softly against the curtains of a mirror? I'm going to start again. Listen, listen. Can you hear the sound surrounding you, inside of you, settling softly against the curtains of awareness? Do you feel the sound as it echoes through and fills the sluggish flesh with life, as if a breeze pushed past an open window and the heavy curtains filled with rustling air. Beached at last, you swam in an unnamed sea before your birth. Something like the tides have pulled you forth from watery waiting and left you out of your element to taste the shock of air that finds its way to fill your untried lungs. Now, instead of waves, you hear the birds contribute tentative chirps, giving dimension to the gray morning light, and add your voice to theirs. Instinctive needs animate your cries and fall like rain to fill your furrowed brow and evaporate as quickly as they come. We watch, eyes crinkled at the edges, our fingers touch anew the substance that we share, as if we were young again, pulsing with a wish for one another, stirred by the scent of a lover as we enter the promise of an unknown land. Raking leaves and certainty. Someone so certain will become uncertain. Those uncertain will become certain. Whatever habit we cherish is lost. Things we dislike, we are given more. Something not to our taste will need to be swallowed more deeply, chewed, digested, if we move toward wholeness. If we refuse, the leaves will fall from our tree of life, first from the top, so high we can't see that they're missing, then lower and lower. Finally, we notice the leaves collecting near our roots, abundant. Only then we ask, what could possibly be the cause? It must be someone else's leaves, or maybe I forgot to rake. It's already too late. They're not mine. The wind blew them here. And a good part of this week has been spent in trying to figure out how to not be overwhelmed with my mess that just follows me around. I don't know where it comes from or why, but it is. And then Susan and I have spent hours trying to find the right pace to speak more from the front of my mouth instead of back here in the throat, and a lot of things like that. It's very, very interesting. Okay, I have actually, look at that. Am I in the right place?
That's good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's good.
Shall we dance? Without thinking, we may dance with the stars. Overthinking, we will trip on our threshold. The mind, enthralled by its magnificence, is unable to stoop, to bow down, lowering itself at the lintel. Well, we'll try this anyway. For those who wish to be group leaders, what we call emptiness may be a gravity descending upon you or me. It may be frightening. We want to cling to our old ideas and experiences. It anchors us to the bottom as our buoyancy attempts to ride above our reactions. I am not here to answer questions. I'm here to live them. Shadows, shrunk to a memory at noon, betray us, as if only the part of the shadow we saw was the truth, eternal. After all, elections and sacred books have been revised with new, though contrary truths. I commit a sin. On the way home, I revise what happened, pretending purity beyond my means. How wonderful to be more a saint, but how much more wonderful to see your own self-righteous reflection lying to protect the image of yourself. Conscience starts there. Can there be a God without a conscience for ourselves? Suppose you were in the presence of God but didn't know it, or the presence of God, the whispered reminder, was in you. What then? By know, I mean experience. To care is more than merely accepting. Reluctant efforts, where are they now? To care and fail is real, and is where giving begins. A pearl. Life may be aligned to where this resonance embodied, these pearls of substance coated by the weight of a breath released. What seems to be drifting may be a pearl of different density. A string attends, one to the next, and the next, fastens to pearls that haven't yet arrived, with those left long behind. The lost, then found, I wear them all. I enter the moment. The moment enters me. Presence now is a pearl. One of the things I haven't said much about is when I first began to write more seriously, and that means when I went to the University of Iowa's Writers' Workshop, everyone was required to take a year's worth of form, just that alone. And I really didn't want to do that, particularly, but it was such a wonderful thing because I learned little by little that form, working with a form, could help you find your way to a different and not automatic part of yourself. You would have to search beyond your habitual to make a rhyme or work with a line. I used to work with villanelles a lot, and there's also terzinelles and things that were from say, France and from the 12th century on. I have some here, and you've even heard little bits of parts here and there, because I then became interested in experimenting with them. But here's a more traditional villanelle. That's it. Okay. A game of pool with colored, round, and numbered faces. Across the felt they roll like math, as the cue ball clicks them to their places without any of the worldly graces their shapes suggest. They chase a path with colored, round, and numbered faces that never leave substantial traces of their passing. On any cue, don't laugh, as the cue ball clicks them to their places as second-natured as a wall clock's face is, or a computer cutting time in half. Those colored, round, and numbered faces on all the shifts that time paces mass produce a fruitless wrath as the cue ball clicks them to their places and the green felt pockets them. Their race's end sinks them toward a retiring craft with colored, round, and numbered faces as the cue ball clicks them to their faces. Now, those last two lines, they began at the top, separated. It was, line 1 was with colored, round, and numbered faces. Line 3 was as cue ball clicks them to their places. And they actually alternate at the end of every 3 lines. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, they get to be a little bit complicated, and it's a wonder if you can do them well. This is a particularly interesting poem because, for example, I say, as second natured as a wall clock's face is, or a computer cutting time in half. That was in the 60s, right, where I thought of it that way. But now, I mean, it's out of date. But I'm more out of date, so. Before it is too late. This is another one where I'm experimenting with the lines. Will I let go in time as darkness blankets my body, passing through sleep and dreams of waking, seized by fear? Will I let go in time as the last breath does not return, sucked into a vacuum of stillness, a part of a greater breath? Will I let go in time when unknowing reveals itself, exposing my last question, becoming my first? Will I let go? If birth was a letting go, a giving way of spirit in a marriage with the life of this body, what is the reflection of life's mirror? If life is letting go in the give and the take, the reflections that occupy, possess, and contend. Who is seen? Who sees? I mean, to me personally, as soon as I say I know something or I know all about it, I've lost it. It's what you can't define that may be the life of any particular thing. And to live with that can actually give you power. You begin to live in yourself instead of comparing yourself with somebody else. So the gathering, the purple Easter iris, standing alone and above its leaves, the grass and matted growth of other years, no one else of your brotherhood in view. I see you from a distance, not knowing what's inside your lure. How close can I come without the desire to know, overcoming sweet anticipation, which is really the foretaste of a sense of unknowing, secure in itself. To possess is a sin, an illusion of self, yet I know you in experience, feeling, being, the scent of you breathed into me, a breath that is not my own. I know you not from me, but from the gathering between us, something beyond individuality that touches, each being our own in the delicate gathering. Moment by moment man. There may be saints who wear the halo well, and those without a halo who embellish their life for potential admirers. I am a moment by moment man, wishing to embrace, a lover sometimes nourished by the resistance I encounter. Meditating while sitting on a cloud is comic book material. Try it. Embrace resistance. Don't push it away. Don't suffocate by pressing too hard. Yes, no. There may be saints who do not polish their halos, preferring to keep them in their closet. God and the devil have an agreement. They work together. The devil shows us where we're weak. God laughs. Quietly, between the noise of affirmation and denial, is myself, unfinished and growing. Letting go, a breath returns to fill me. I embrace and am embraced. To ask instead of to know. To see myself in a multitude of mirrors. Community incarnate, turn my water into wine. So someone said, what was the connection between the pottery that I do and the poetry, or how do they relate? I've been writing since high school, so that's more than 60 years probably, but I can't count that high exactly anymore. But at some point, I knew that my life needed to be more focused, it could just end up being a life of pretense. And I found that working with clay began to anchor me in a way that other things did not. And then, with that being anchored, my body being anchored, the focus within my body, I was able to receive poems in a completely different way. And it began to be a balance in me instead of off-center this way or off-center that way. It Potters know what off-center is, and that's what they learn. I keep learning it, but these relate to that. This vessel, I was lifted from clay by breath attended, and will return again, carried to my origin, my source. Looking upside down because we are, the bowl of heaven holds stars and worlds, yet never spills. I am the clay, the vessel that receives. I am what fills and empties, the attendant that carries and serves. This shadow, my body, that tugs at me with its gravity, tells me where I am. If I listen, my body is an ear to God. This body, our disguise, returns to the elements it is composed of. The rest blows away, the finest pollen gusted by stray winds, unless you dance with your twin. This cup. This life's a simple cup between the empty and the full. When empty, fill me up, and once the thirst's displaced, there is once more the taste. What I believe in changes with the fullness of the cup, the many mountain ranges and valleys here to cross. The experience that remains is exposure, submission, exchange. When empty, fill me up. I suffer from the loss. The universe in a drop of wine, that drop of wine in me. Eden wasn't in the past, nor was the wine, I think. All sages from one cauldron drink, from first light to the last. And then, as a comment, this put into words. Any understanding I've ever been able to dress with words most often required 10 or 15 years to live with and through. Language blooms late. Words come as segments, disconnected, out of sequence, inside and out of sequential time. A movement in myself draws me closer. Such words are trapped, a zoo their home, or a museum of wishful thinking. But one wishes for the touch of the unknown to slip between the cracks in the sidewalk of the known. The language black and white on paper through Ruidosa's dense packed mountain trees. Breathe. Search not with the eyes. Breathe through the skin. Embrace with presence anchored in the belly, singing praise in the throat. Keep calluses in view. Sometimes they soften. Emotion and feeling need an educated leash. Search not with the eyes, breathe through the skin. And what do you think about this now?
Whatever.
Huh?
Whatever you want to do.
I can't hear you.
Whatever you want to do.
Okay, well, this may be the last. Time, this temple, and those kind hands. I knew as soon as Red Hawk read his poem to Chandrika that I was going to be in trouble. I hadn't written one for you, and in over 30 years of on and off again convention said, I love you, as you could easily point out. Now this, if you still collect such things in your scrapbook of memories. My heart is in the ether. Eyes still wander from face to face and place to place. My body you can have today. Short-term memory is plenty long enough. Now I say these things to put them in a context. Hell, we were married in an Anglican church and forgot to invite, half our friends. And our teacher found a way to break her leg so she wouldn't have to attend. Auspicious beginning, some might say. But that was the outer story, the masquerade of an inward journey. We probably couldn't have done it alone, and we've been alone. The voice that speaks with authority of this strange journey is silence, and the certain necessity of survival. A need that occasions the impulse to listen in many directions, all at once and in time, time measured by the hands of a dolly clock, oriented to what is not known instead of the known. If given to holding on to stringy tensions, the easy, familiar emotions shaping our day, the loose but driven imaginings that give purpose to life, given to holding, not being, to search, a way not given to answers, beholden to now and the shift of hourglass sand, an initiation that fills one's form, and being present to it, not at all the same. To become what I am, not those images of myself I believe myself to be. Sifting the smallest particles of myself through sieves that screen and separate the coarsest from the fine, then building again, one grain at a time, a column of certainty that joins heaven and earth together with glue supplied by friction and ineffable longing, while hunting for the meaning of our lives. We are victims of our suggestibility. We see the truth from a blind of judgment built on the circumference, camouflaged to appear more central. A periphery that moves too quickly, even while revolving at the same exact speed as the axis in the center turns. Paradox and law. Real, not clock time, grows shorter, while the suggestion of the passage grows longer. Willfully intruding on lives too filled with limitations and constraints. Slide with me now down the backside of the slippery hill of time. Today's your birthday, Exercise those kind hands. Let them nudge us back to wholeness. Coax, caress the life of feeling back into the temple in man. This is your love poem. Don't say I didn't write you one. Finally, when all the gods are taken from us, or that part in us retreats to safety where one feels safe without the cultivated taste or confrontation and exposure, that is when the Roadrunner appears to guide us through canyons of lost and losing souls, where wily coyote waits behind the next boulder or just beneath the rope suspension bridge to ourselves. He hopes to cut before we come to the place of crossing. Thank you.